I mean, Lebanon and Israel. What's going on with the IDF? Christian rapists? Is that a thing? Christian rapists? 1, 2, 5, 10, 20. Welcome back to From Tech to Tanks. The Middle East is completely different. Everything's changed. And that's not even an exaggeration. Israel, a country, took out Iran, a country 10 times its size and 70 times its population. That is not an exaggeration when I say that it took out Iran. Okay? It destroyed its ballistic missile infrastructure. Whether that's 60, 70, or 80% of their ballistic missiles, it doesn't matter. They are destroyed. According to basically all reports, other than conspiracy theorists, the Iranian nuclear program is decimated. Now, it could be that the uranium is buried underground. It could be that they didn't destroy completely. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is, Iran no longer poses an existential threat to the state of Israel as well as the West, because that's what they were aiming to do. Let's be clear. There's no reason they should have thousands of ballistic missiles that reach Europe, for example. There's also no reason that they should enrich uranium to 60%, which is military grade, which is only designated for weapons. So let's just be very clear. After the operation, if it wasn't clear enough that Iran has malicious intent, they have officially removed the representatives who were supposed to basically check their nuclear facilities to make sure that there's nothing illegal going on there. They are now banned, and Iran is no longer a part of the global nuclear organization that basically monitors anything that's going on in the nuclear world. So they pulled out. Again, if you were friendly, looking to build nuclear facilities for civilian purposes, why would they do that? So it's clear to everyone who has a brain, other than Tucker Carlson, who I don't know who he's being paid by, that Iran had malicious intent and they no longer pose a threat. Again, could it be that they'll, go back to their nuclear ambitions to start rebuilding? Sure. But if and when they do that, both Israel and the United States will know about it and will act accordingly. So, you look at the offense and the surprise attack carried out by Israel on Iran. As far as I'm concerned, perhaps, I would say maybe number one, but if not number one, number 2 or 3 most impressive military operations in history, and most definitely in Israel. You had Entebbe, of course, the 6-Day War, the Independence War, many, many unbelievable things Israel accomplished militarily over the last 70 years. But this is up there. There's no question about it. And the deception, what Israel had to do to deceive Iran so that they can have this surprise attack is unbelievable. The stories are just literally unbelievable. So that's what happens on the offensive side. On the defensive side, Israel intercepted/detonated 100% of Iranian drones headed towards Israel. 100%. Not one of them hit the target. Not one of them impacted Israel. 100% of them were intercepted. And the ballistic missiles, which I have to say, I was in Tel Aviv and I had not seen, the damage that a ballistic missile could cause, because they, thank God, didn't hit anywhere near me. But I was sitting in Tel Aviv, mid-Tel Aviv, and I'm not going to say the place because it's somewhat, I would say confidential or sensitive to release that information. But I was sitting in the middle of Tel Aviv, and my back was facing the buildings behind me, and I was talking to someone, and that person looked at me and said, it's kind of funny looking at you talking about what we're talking about and seeing that behind you. And I said, what's behind me? And I turned around, and one of the buildings that were hit by an Iranian ballistic missile was right behind me. I could not believe what I was seeing. I mean, levels of destruction that I had never seen before. My understanding is that the whole building has to come down and they have to rebuild it. They can't fix it, which again makes sense given the level of destruction that I saw with my own eyes. It's wild. But out of the, if I'm not mistaken, 450 to 500 ballistic missiles that Iran fired into Israel, each one of them with the ability to kill hundreds of Israelis. Again, I'm going to repeat that. Each ballistic missile, judging by the damage that each one of those caused, the ones that did land, had the potential to kill hundreds of Israelis. 450 of those were fired into Israel. My understanding is that 20-something of them hit, and they caused serious casualties in Israel. Close to 30 people died, were killed as a result of these Iranian ballistic missiles. Let's not belittle that. That's an astronomical number. But also, we should have had thousands of Israeli casualties. Thousands. And I always say this, imagine a conversation between you and your child or your grandchild one day, telling them about this war, starting from October 7th, that 5,000 terrorists march into Israel with one goal and one goal only, and that is to kill as many Jews as possible, and 5,000 terrorists with automatic weapons only Again, only killed 1,200 people. The math ain't mathin', and neither is the math of this war. There is no reason we should not have thousands of casualties. So that is unbelievable. What Israel did to Iran is unbelievable. The fact that America came in and did what they did is unbelievable. I mean, those B-2 bombers, listen, those are some of the most impressive and just unbelievable weapons, as far as I'm concerned, in the world, maybe number one. And so, what America did, and I would say what's one of the most impressive things is just the collaboration, the level of collaboration between the United States and Israel, likes of which I don't think we've ever seen before, honestly. So that's incredible. Trump made it very clear that if Iran goes back to developing its nuclear weapons, America will indeed attack again. So the last couple of weeks have been incredible. I mean, just miraculous, biblical stuff. And I say biblical because that's a really important point. And, I'm going to tell you something, guys, that I don't think I've ever said it out loud. And that is that there's certain things that as an observant religious Jew, I learned my whole life. Certain things about the end of days and before Messiah, before Mashiach comes, things that are going to happen. And I got to be honest, some of these things just never made sense to me. It's like the world's going to understand, the greatness of Israel. The world's going to side with Israel. Like, what? That's never going to happen. But here we are. After the Iranian attack, most of the free world stood with Israel. And the Middle East, when this war ended, has fundamentally, completely transformed into an entirely new region. I mean, what we're talking about right now is biblical. We're talking about the normalization of relations between Israel. We already have the UAE as part of the Abraham Accords, but now there's discussion about the normalization of relations between Israel and Syria. Syria. I mean, 6 months ago, we had Assad there. 6 months ago. And now we're talking about relationships between Israel and Syria. But that's not even the craziest part. Lebanon? I mean, Lebanon and Israel. What? Again, 3 months ago, Hezbollah was running Lebanon. And now they're so weak because of what Israel did to them that the Lebanese government is considering going into an agreement as part of the Abraham Accords to normalize relations with Israel. The entire Arab world, basically with almost no exceptions, because the Iranian people love Israel. I'm not talking about the regime. The people love Israel. We have Syria, we have Lebanon, we have the UAE, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Bahrain, and the list just goes on of Arab and Muslim countries that just seconds ago hated Israel and now looking to partner with Israel and looking to form alliances with Israel. This is biblical stuff that, again, if you had told me this just 3 months ago, I would have said, you're nuts. There's no way that's going to happen. And here we are. So, it wasn't just a victory, an astonishing, astounding, staggering victory over Iran, which it was. But it was the beginning of a fundamental transformation of the Middle East and the world. Because I'll be honest with you, throughout this war, one of the things that bothered me most was what's going on with the IDF? How could it be that we, beat 5 armies when we didn't have an army in 1948, and now we can't even beat these punks called Hamas? How could that be? And I questioned, the might and the military capabilities of the IDF throughout this war. I didn't want to say it out loud, but I'm like, is this the same IDF? And the answer is, it's quite clear. Israel has its deterrence back. Israel has shown what it's capable of doing. And so the obvious question is, why aren't we doing that in Gaza? And the answer is hostages. We can't do in Gaza what we did to Iran without killing our hostages. So our top priority, of course, is bringing back those hostages. If there were no hostages in Gaza, this war would have ended on October 8th. That's not an exaggeration. So now there's a lot of discussion of potential hostage deals, which, again, this is so important. There's a verse in Torah, not in the Torah, but in the prophets. Part of Jewish scripture is that the verse says, I'll say it in Hebrew, Hashem oz la'amo yiten, God will give his people, the Jewish people, might and strength. And then the second part of the verse is Hashem yivarech otam b'shalom, God will bless his people with peace. That's on the surface a little bit of a strange verse. He's going to give us might and bless us with peace. He's going to give us might and we're going to win wars. But what does might and strength have to do with peace? And the answer is that's how you make peace. You don't make peace from a place of weakness. You don't make peace from a place of pleading, oh, please come out. No, you make peace from a place of strength. And Israel has demonstrated it's unbelievable, unparalleled. I don't know that that's an exaggeration. Maybe, of course, you have America, but other than America, I don't know. The Israeli Air Force is clearly one of the best air forces in the world. I don't know how one measures the best military in the world, but Israel's up there, no question about it, especially after what they did in Iran, what we did in Iran. And so the world has changed. Israel's deterrence is back. Israel is now viewed again as a military superpower. Iran is to say weakened is just a joke. I mean, they're just done. But you got to laugh at the propaganda that Iran tells its people. I want to tell you a quick video that I watched from my friend Yusuf Haddad. If you're not familiar, Yusuf Haddad is a Israeli activist, let's call him, and he's an Arab, Muslim. And he's very outspoken, and he's incredible. I highly recommend you follow him, but he did something hysterical. He stood in front of Azrieli Towers, which are, some of the most iconic towers in Israel, in the middle of Tel Aviv. And he recorded a video, and he said, in the video, he said, look at this. And he played a propaganda video from Iran where the Iranian regime was feeding the people a story that they had demolished and destroyed the Azrieli Towers. Of course, that never happened. And so Yusuf Haddad is talking to the camera, and he plays this video, and he goes to the Iranian people. He goes, either you believe this garbage because you're a bunch of fools, or, and he turns around and shows the Azrieli Towers, and he says, or we managed to build these towers again in 2 days, right? Because they're here. And so that's, what we see throughout all of their propaganda. They just blatantly lie. I mean, we killed their entire leadership in one night. All of their nuclear scientists in one night. And these fools tell their people that they won. And how are they able to do that? Because they shut down the internet. And all they have are their propaganda machines, their TV stations, which of course Israel also bombed. And so the people have no access to outside information. And so they can feed them whatever they want. And they're feeding them that they won this war, which is an utter joke. I wrote the other day, the complete list of leaders that have won a war and then gone down to their bunker to hide includes one, the supreme leader, the Ayatollah, right? You won the war and yet you're hiding underground in this bunker. What kind of victory is that? So it's a joke to see how they lie to their people, but this was a definitive and historic victory over Iran. And let's be honest, Bibi's mission in life for the past 20 years has been to take down Iran. Yes, of course, on his watch, October 7th happened, and let's just be clear. People will remember that. People will remember Bibi for October 7th happening on his watch. But if you ask me what Bibi's legacy is going to be, at the end of the day, what he will be most remembered for is what he did in Iran. And it is unbelievable. And it also brings up an annoying topic, which I've spoken about many times, which is the level of hypocrisy, right? Because, there were some people who were in the anti-Bibi crowd pre the Iranian war who didn't make a 180 and said, that he deserves this credit and whatever. But there are many, many people, I would go as far as to say thousands, maybe more, of Israelis who still won't give him credit. In fact, this is unbelievable, I saw an interview with one, I'm not going to even mention his name, it's not worth giving him any attention, but with one of Bibi's biggest haters or critics, and he's on TV, and they asked him about this Iranian operation, and he goes, yeah, all of those amazing soldiers and those pilots and all the decision makers in the government, they deserve a lot of credit. And the TV host is like, all those decision makers? Can you name him? Like, he wouldn't say the name Bibi. And the host on TV goes, it's kind of like the ultra-Orthodox Jews not being able to say the word sex. It's like they talk about it, but they won't say the word. Just say Bibi. He deserves credit. You might hate him. You might think he's a narcissist. You might think he's a liar. Say whatever you want. But to not give him credit for what we did in Iran is absurd. Which leads me to a story that happened to me this week that I can't describe to you the emotions that I felt when this story happened to me. So I'm sitting at the barber. It seems like all these things happened at the barber. I mean, my visa was revoked when I was at the barber too. But anyway, I'm sitting at the barber and I'm waiting for my turn. And this guy is getting a haircut. And of course, he starts doing what one does at the barbershop and starts talking about current events. And of course, it led to politics. And, it's not an exaggeration to say that as a whole, the left in Israel, like the pure left, I would say is pretty much gone, with the exception of really, really extremists, like extreme left. But the left of, a two-state solution, giving the Palestinians a state after October 7th, basically gone. Anyway, this guy's sitting in the chair in the barber seat, and we start talking about politics, and then he goes, Bibi Netanyahu is the worst thing that ever happened to Israel. And I swear to you, I kid you not, I thought he was going to turn around at me and laugh and say, I'm just kidding. But he wasn't. He wasn't kidding. He said, Bibi Netanyahu is the worst thing that ever happened to Israel. I had to ask him to repeat what he just said. And I said, the worst thing that happened to Israel. The worst. The worst. I said, worse than Hamas. Worse than Hamas. Worse than October 7th. Worse than October. I said, how could you even say that? How could you even let those words out of your mouth? And then he continues and he doubles down and he says, Bibi Netanyahu did nothing good for this country. Nothing. I'm like, he did nothing good. Nothing. He didn't just beat Iran. No, this is what the guy says to me. He says, no, he put us in that situation in the first place. He got us to that situation, so I'm not going to give him credit for removing the threat because he created the threat. Which, what? Right? And then he says, I said, Hamas, he created the threat. Nasrallah, taking out Nasrallah, he goes, anybody would have done that. I'm like, do you understand what the experts were telling Netanyahu before he took out Nasrallah, including, by the way, the president of the United States, was telling Netanyahu, if you take out Nasrallah, World War III. By the way, they said the same thing about attacking Iran, of course. Everyone, World War III, right? I mean, it took guts. It took a lot of guts for Netanyahu to pull that trigger, pull that trigger, right? To take out Nasrallah. And Hania, and Def, and Sinwar. I mean, the list just goes on and on. This guy says he did nothing good for the state of Israel. Nothing. I literally could not believe my ears. And he just kept doubling down. And then he said something at one point. I was just like, this guy's clearly not well. He says, I said to him, like, I understand. You don't think Netanyahu is a freaking genius? You don't think he's one of the best politicians of our generation? So first he's like, no, I think he's, a liar. And he opens his mouth. I know he's going to lie. But then he says to me, and he just drops this on me. And I'm like, all right, this guy's not well. He says, besides the fact that Netanyahu's intelligence is irrelevant because, listen to this, he doesn't call the shots in this country. I'm like, what does that mean? Who calls the shots? I thought he was going to say the deep state. I thought he was going to say, the courts and the media. He goes, his wife. I'm like, wait, come again? He says, Sarah Netanyahu's wife, is the one that calls the shots in this country. So me and the barber, who of course agree, like most of Israel, looked at each other like, all right, this guy's not well. Like he's not, if that's what he thinks, he's not well. Sarah Netanyahu didn't even know about the Iranian attack. By the way, one of the things that Netanyahu did to deceive the Iranians is he told all of his ministers that they are not allowed to talk to their wives, to their family. No one's allowed to know about this attack. And I think I mentioned this last time, but one of the ministers' wives sensed that something was up. And she kind of speculated about Iran. Netanyahu went and called her on the phone personally. He said, you think we're going to attack Iran? He goes, I'm too weak politically to attack Iran. And he convinced her that it's not happening. Of course, just days before he did it, right? So anyway, I was talking to this guy, Netanyahu, saying that Netanyahu's, not calling the shots here in the Syria. I mean, again, there's something wrong with this man, right? But it does open, an important topic, and that is the obsession. And there's no other word to describe it. The absolute obsession with Netanyahu and the absolute hypocrisy surrounding Netanyahu. Because again, if you're going to say, which you're allowed to say, that Netanyahu has to take accountability for October 7th because he's the CEO of the country and the buck stops with him, I accept that. After the war, by all means, he should resign as long as we can find someone to replace him. But if he's responsible for October 7th, then he's also responsible for Iran. And he's also responsible for taking out Hezbollah, which, by the way, Iran asked Hezbollah to participate in this last operation/war, and Hezbollah rejected them. You know why? Because they know what Israel did to them. So Netanyahu took out Hezbollah, took out Hamas's leadership, basically destroyed Hamas. I mean, yeah, they're still hiding underground and still, they still get these wins, quote unquote, where they planted a bomb, horribly, tragically on this vehicle and killed 7 soldiers. They're still having these wins, but they're underground. They're hiding like rats. Their leadership is gone. They have no contact with the outside world, so they're finished. Iran is finished. I mean, what Bibi did here is unbelievable. And the fact that these anti-Bibi people will give him the credit, quote unquote, for October 7th, but won't give him the credit for the unbelievable things, it's just hypocrisy. And it's very similar, of course, to what's going on in America, right? Which is Trump derangement syndrome, TDS. Here it's NDS, Netanyahu derangement syndrome. It's a real sickness. It's an obsession and it's a sickness. So, I just wanted to point that out, but I want to address one more thing. And that is the rumors/reports of what the media likes to call violent settlers. We've all heard it, the Jewish terrorists, the violent settlers. Let me tell you something, and I'm going to say it as clearly as I can. There is no such thing, there is no such phenomenon as violent settlers or as Jewish terror. No such thing. What do I mean by no such thing? Are there criminals? Of course there are criminals. Is there such a thing as Christian rapists? Is that a thing? Christian rapists? What do you mean there are rapists that are Christians? Yeah, there are rapists. Their religion is irrelevant. And there are criminals who happen to live in Judea and Samaria, who break the law and who are violent, who should be behind bars. But to call them violent settlers or Jewish terrorists is ridiculous. First of all, the numbers are microscopic. So using the same word for hundreds of people, again, criminals, as you use for tens of, maybe hundreds of millions of radical Islamists, to use the same word is just being dishonest. That's first of all. But forget the volume, okay? Forget the volume. These people, again, I'm going to say it again, they're criminals. They're not Jewish terrorists. They don't act in the name of Judaism. Let's not forget that every Islamist terrorist, when they do what they do, they accompany it with a declaration, Allah Akbar. They're doing it in the name of praising Allah. These criminals, they don't do anything that they do in the name of religion, in the name of Judaism. They don't represent me. They are criminals, but they're not Jewish terrorists. Jewish terrorist is a man-made fabrication of Western media that they made up to kind of calm their conscience of what the world is doing to Israel. It doesn't exist. Again, there have been people, and I'm not going to name names, throughout Israel's history that did things that were just an abomination, that were disgusting, that murdered people. There have been people like that. I'm not going to deny that. 1, 2, 5, 10, 20. It kind of reminds me of where I live in Beit Shemesh. There's this, small, tiny little fringe group of hundreds, probably less, of ultra-Orthodox Jews. And if you walk through their neighborhood, dressed not modestly, if you're a woman, they'll spit at you, they'll call you horrible names. It's disgusting. And they get tons of media coverage because they should. And so the world who sees that thinks, oh, that's the ultra-Orthodox world. When in reality, the ultra-Orthodox world is hundreds of thousands, millions of people. And these are hundreds, maybe, right? But they make a lot of noise, loud bark. And so the violent settlers are a bunch of kids who, by the way, I'm going to say this right now, I'm sorry this offends you, made mistakes, did bad things, but they are some of the most ideological people that I know. They are standing and living in a place, instead of living in Tel Aviv with their smartphones, they're living on hilltops, basically, acting as a buffer to the rest of Israel with their Nokia phones because they don't want to be distracted by the smartphone, generation. These are some of the most ideological people with the deepest values that I know. And to be clear, settlers, what does settlers mean? You can't be a settler in your own land, right? You can't occupy your own land, right? And so my brothers, all of them are settlers. What does that mean? They live 15 minutes outside of Israel's capital, outside of Jerusalem. But the world would call them settlers because they're in Judea and Samaria. It's ridiculous. It's a media fabrication. There's no such thing. And we, as people who care about the truth, need to speak up about this whenever we hear that term. Just like we need to speak up about the term the West Bank. No, it's Judea and Samaria. The Palestinian people, you mean Jordanians and Egyptians who made up the word Palestinian and hijacked it, no pun intended, from what was Israel, because Palestine was Israel, and we have archaeological evidence to that. So, we have to stand up when we hear these fabricated terms because the world likes to spread lies. And when you accept lies, then they build on those lies and perpetrate more lies. So we, as people who care about the truth, need to stand up and correct people when they use these words. There are no violent settlers. There are criminals. There are no Jewish terrorists. There are criminals. Bibi has done incredible things. Israel has achieved historic victory over Iran. Don't believe any of the propaganda. The Middle East is fundamentally changed, and the world is fundamentally changed thanks to Israel and Netanyahu's leadership. Don't forget it, and spread the truth. So the first question is about the Abraham Accords, which we talked about, and I think Netanyahu and Trump are very bullish on the Abraham Accords, as they should be, by the way. I mean, I went to Dubai. I had the best time of my life. 10 years ago, if you told me I'd go to Dubai, I'd think you were nuts. So the Abraham Accords are incredible. The first version, the first round of them. And so now Trump, as Mr. Peacemaker who wants to end all wars, is pushing very, very hard for the next phase of the Abraham Accords. Netanyahu announced that he's going to Washington on Sunday. He'll meet with Trump on Monday. You can be sure the two topics they'll talk about are the end of the Gaza war, which will hopefully include the return of all the hostages, which is what is being discussed right now, and the Abraham Accords. Those are the two things I think they're going to speak about. We are going to see an expansion of the Abraham Accords, whether that will include Syria and Lebanon or include Saudi Arabia or other things. We don't know yet, but you can be sure that there'll be more Arab countries that will jump on the bandwagon and join the Abraham Accords and normalize relations with Israel, which, again, this is biblical stuff. It's unbelievable to see, but as we all know, things change overnight, so there's no way to know what will happen. But one thing for sure, and that is that the Middle East has changed fundamentally as a result of this war with Iran. So while the world was busy with Iran and Gaza and other things, we had a development which honestly is perhaps as significant, maybe even more significant than what happened in Iran, and that is the democratic, socialist, anti-Semite, Islamist Mamdani became the Democratic, candidate to run for mayor of New York. I mean, you can't make this. Listen, he doesn't even hide it. He's a full-blown socialist. I mean, communist. He basically. By the way, someone pointed this out, and I find it interesting. Socialists and communists, they want equality, but have you ever heard of anyone talking about making the poor richer? All they talk about is making the rich poorer. We shouldn't have billionaires, is what he said. How about we aim to make everyone billionaires? Why are we taking the rich people and bringing them down instead of taking the poor people and bringing them up? Think about that. Socialism doesn't work. We know that. Communism doesn't work. But this guy is a full-blown socialist. He wants to have government-run supermarkets. What? The guy's nuts. I mean, he literally said this. You can't make this stuff up. He literally said, criminals, instead of being arrested, we're going to send social workers. What? I mean, the guy's nuts. He's off his rocker. And he's gone on record many times saying that he would arrest Netanyahu if he came to New York. That's what he said, for real. And, that Israel doesn't have a right to exist. He won't condemn, the calls for genocide from the river to the sea, which is erasing Israel. The guy's a full-blown Islamist, and let's not sugarcoat it. He is. He's gone on record, and he's not ashamed of it. He, of course, now has to talk about antisemitism. Oh, anti-Semitic BS. Anyone who knows this guy and has followed his career, he's a full-blown anti-Semite. And honestly, I hope and pray he doesn't win, but, the chances of him winning, if I'm being conservative, 75%, probably a lot more than that. And unless some miracle happens, and there are a lot of things in the works. Bill Ackman is spending a lot of money to, fund him out of office. So I don't know what's going to happen. I hope he doesn't win. But if he does win, to my brothers and sisters in New York, it's over. Come home. So, it's crazy that we've come here. It's crazy that we're at this point. Of course, open parentheses, a tiny little event. 2 days ago at the world's biggest music festival in the UK, we had that complete lunatic on stage yelling, "Death to the IDF, death to the IDF," and the entire crowd, "Death to the IDF." So he was, of course, condemned by the music festival. His visa was revoked from the United States. 27 of his concerts were canceled, and his management, everyone fired him. So he is paying the price. Of course, I think he should be behind bars, but the fact that millions or whatever, thousands, I don't know how many people were there, chanted along with him is just a clear indication of how broken the moral compass of Western civilization is. It's scary stuff. And so I'll just end with saying to all my brothers and sisters in the UK and in New York and everywhere else, Canada, I really don't know what you're waiting for. I mean, to say that there's writing on the wall would be a laughable understatement. I mean, the wall's covered with writing. So got to get on a plane. It's time. And, fear and threats and anti-Semitism shouldn't be the reason to come to Israel. You should come to Israel because Israel's amazing. But that could be a good catalyst, a good trigger for you to realize you're not home anymore. You're not safe anymore. Come to Israel. So I'm looking forward to meeting all you all, and I'm looking most forward to buying you a shawarma. See you next week.